Welcome to Vision Chat, a podcast about spiritual topics, with your hosts, Virginia and Stina.
Hello and welcome back to Vision Chat. In this episode, we are doing a recap from all of our guests in the season 2 of Vision Chat. In this season, we have had different types of mediums, a hypnotist, EFT therapist, poet, somatic therapist, yoga instructor, plant medicine enthusiast, clairvoyant teacher, and returned guests. And first out is Johnny Torgersen, who is a medium and the hypnotist. And he is talking about how he is using his hypnosis on people to help them kind of get a movement in your life to get to your goals and everything that is standing away from you reaching them. Also, he's a medium, so he can do that as well, which include talking to people from the other side, being in different circles, which he is talking a little bit about. Yeah, and we talked a little bit about how it is in Norway and how it was, because it was only 18 years old when he started, and he's a little bit older than me, so I can probably imagine it being more difficult being spiritual or doing something spiritual back in the days than it is today. And one of the favorite things that he talked about in this episode for me was how much our subconscious is in control, even though your conscious mind wants to make a change. So 90 to 95% is the subconscious more powerful than the thinking mind, which is mind blowing. What do you think, Virginia?
Yeah, I agree. Johnny came in with some really good information about hypnosis and mediumship and just the interesting combination of both. I didn't know that was a thing you could do, but apparently it is.
Yeah.
How was it for you interviewing a fellow Norwegian? Because he's from also Norway.
Yeah, it was nice. It's cool.
It's not very
I don't
common
know.
either.
Yeah, that's true though. I think yeah, he's the second Norwegian person we had on the show, but he's the first Norwegian person we didn't know about before doing the podcast.
Right.
So it's cool to see how small the world is, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I
Yeah.
really like Johnny's explanation. He kept it very simple and easy for, I think, people to understand. I mean, I understood a little bit more about, what he described as like raising vibration and going into a meditative state where it, well, I think he talked about this with regards to the hypnosis as well, that, when you're in deep in the hypnosis and the mediumship, that your brain kind of goes, it mimics like dream state. So it's very similar to when you go to sleep and you're going into the different waves, the A, B, and delta waves, and where you are allowed to dream. And so I thought it was very interesting because it reminded me of this show that I watched where they were doing research on the brain, and they were having someone, I think I had asked you this before, Tyler Henry, who's a medium,
Oh
and they
yeah.
were recording an episode and he was giving someone a reading. But while he was doing this, they were connecting all these wires to his, they put a cap on him with all these wires, and they hooked up a computer, and they just really wanted to study brainwaves while he was providing this reading. And by the end of it, they were able to to see that certain parts of the brain were lighting up, and it was very similar to when someone's asleep and dreaming, but he was fully conscious and awake and obviously talking to the person in front of him while he was doing this reading. So I think it's really, really interesting that science is kind of heading in that direction of wanting to understand these topics more and what the brain's capable of. So if you
Yeah.
want to hear about Johnny and hypnosis and mediumship, head on over to that episode and listen. It's a really, really interesting and educational episode.
Yeah. He's a very nice guy.
Yes. And then we spoke to Nineveh Canavino, the SoCal wine country medium. Oh, we forgot to mention Johnny is a friend. He was referred by Michael Mayo, who's a medium,
Yeah.
and Nineveh is also a referral from Michael Mayo. So thank you, Michael. Sent over some very lovely people to interview. Nineveh is a medium, and she also teaches, and she's, I think, a very good teacher in the sense of she knows how to explain what mediumship is, how you tap into it. I loved her personal story about just being aware of her gifts very early on as a child and thinking like everybody could see and communicate with spirit, and just how she had to kind of shut it down for some years because her family wasn't really accepting of it and she didn't want conflict with family, obviously. And so she's like, all right, well, I'm going to shut this down. And she did for quite some time. I just liked her story. I think it was a very, she shared with us some vulnerable moments and, how she came back into mediumship. And yeah, I mean, I loved her explanation of just, her purpose of why she's doing mediumship nowadays and why she's teaching people. What did you like
Yeah.
about that episode?
I really liked the way she explained everything, and she made it, I don't know how to phrase this, but she has a lot of wisdom, and usually sometimes you can get thrown off or like you don't really get a grip of everything the other person is trying to communicate
Mhm,
or what they're saying. But I feel like she's telling and saying and sharing her wisdom in a way that it is understandable. It is making you, or like for me,
mhm,
I cannot speak for everybody, but I feel like she's sharing in a way that it is digestible, that
mhm.
you understand what she's saying, even though you didn't know, like, had the knowledge before. She had a lot of good stuff, but mediums are like, the way she said it, is helping people to see what other doesn't see. Also that everybody can be a medium, but it's like a preference too. Some people, they wanted to go all the way, and other people, they can just have a little bit and they're content. So yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to learn more about mediumship, head on over to that episode and get to know Nineveh and her story.
So next one out was our teacher, Andrew Fritz. He is psychic. He can do readings. He's also mediumship, but this is trance mediumship, which is you kind of allow somebody that is coming into your body. And he talks a little bit about that and around what people kind of fear, that, oh my God, am I getting possessed or is people taking over my body? And he has a lot of wisdom on the mediumship, but also in general for like as a clairvoyant. We had a training with him too that is going inwards, but you're going outwards for the different dimension that we talked a little bit about. Oh, and he's also talking about how it was growing up and having his gifts, and how it was growing up in a haunted house, and he can catching up everything that was happening in his house, and his journey of finding spirituality and waking up in a sense. So, what is your favorite thing about this episode?
My favorite thing was actually getting to interview our teacher because for many years, there's that dynamic of like, like, oh, we have to respect the teacher. You can't ask them too many questions. But this was our opportunity to just kind of have a full hour and only ask him questions, which I thought was really nice. So thank you, Andrew, for allowing us to do that. He's a very talented teacher, very talented clairvoyant. I think that I really enjoyed hearing, just like you said, like his upbringing, growing up in a haunted house, and just the funny story about practicing when he first started really learning about clairvoyance. And we'll just say that the story included pole dancing. So if you really want to know what that's all about, head on over to that episode and listen to it. It was a really funny story. I love the way that he just talked about his passion for teaching nowadays and wanting to, pass along his knowledge to anybody who's interested in learning.
Yeah. And you also threw him a question that was a little hard. I don't remember
I did.
100% what it was. But it's very good. So go to his episode if you want to listen more about that. And also
Yeah.
what forgiveness and what he thinks about forgiveness too, which is interesting. Yeah.
And next we had SC Laurie, Samantha Laurie, who is a poet, writer, mom. She created butterflies and pebbles. So you could see that on Instagram. She has a huge following. She teaches workshops for women and men too, I think. But I think it's mostly women taking classes with her. But she's I want to say one of the most phenomenal people we've interviewed, just because, personally speaking, I was very moved by her story and her genuineness, her vulnerability, and talking about just her life and loss and, reclaiming her power and reclaiming her happiness and making the point that, you can rewrite your story. And her thing is like, acknowledge all of the, what did she call them? Ghosts? The ghost chasing after you. And
Yeah.
I forgot what she said. She said it way better. But
Yeah.
do you remember what it was?
I think it was something about running. The ghosts won't leave you unless you leave the ghosts or outrun the ghosts of
Yeah.
your past.
Yeah. And I just like, I love that, she empowers women or empowers people to use journaling and writing as a way of like literally taking control and saying, okay, you've been through all these difficult things. And now what? Now what do you want to do? How do you want to move forward in your life and rewrite your own story? Are you gonna, you know, give it a happy ending? Are you going to have a part two? Like it doesn't have to be an ending, it can be a continuation. But I really, really enjoyed talking to her. I was fighting back tears, so I was trying not to cry during that. But very moving. What did you like about that episode?
There was a lot. I like the way that she's talking about what happens after you're done with healing or when you process your trauma and stuff like that, because I don't feel like there's a lot of people talking about that, that
Right.
you're choosing your new story and new life. But also how vulnerable she was, but at the same time, you don't get the energy of her being a victim or her wanting to get attention, or like she's sharing from a place that is so genuine and beautiful for inspiration instead of gaining something from others. And I think that is very rare and also very raw. Also, when you guys talked about how it is like you can see children like growing up and how much happiness they have, and then you lose it
Mhm.
somewhere when you start growing up. I think that was also very interesting to listen to. So, if you want to hear more about that and poetry, check out her episode.
Yeah.
So, next one out is Megan Elisa. And Megan Elisa is a evidential medium. And evidential medium is somebody that can kind of give you receipts or proof who you're talking to and what they did, if there's anything special that maybe you have had with that person that other people don't know about, she can kind of get that through to like show she's the real deal, I guess. She also talks about her story and how she became a medium. And I think after losing her parents, that she was seeking out, is there a way for me to contact them? And yeah, different stories about her life. And also that she can talk to animals, which is cool, that has passed away.
Yeah, I don't think we've had anybody that talked about like animal communication.
Yeah.
This is the first time we had somebody who can contact your deceased pets and
Yes.
your pets in spirit and actually communicate with them, which I thought was fascinating because I've heard of this before, but I've never actually had the chance to talk to anybody that could do this. And I think that's a really special gift to have. I also like the way that she is just a very strong person, and she is very ethical and really wants to inform people about what mediumship is and what it isn't. And so there's a lot of misconceptions, there's a lot of misunderstandings around, spirit and death and, all those things. And she really, like in her work, I think tries to educate people and say, nope, this is what's right, this is what's wrong. And I think the important thing about that is so that people are not so afraid about mediumship or about spirit, and that they feel more comfortable, and that really the messages of love are what come through, so that also people who are vulnerable and grieving don't get conned by someone that's coming in and saying, no, your loved one's suffering, and for $300 I can make their suffering end, we'll just clear that. And kind of just saying, don't do that, like that's not ethical, it's not accurate. But there's a lot of people out there that aren't really doing what is right or ethical, and she's really out there trying to educate people. So,
Yeah, I love that,
yeah.
that she's sharing her knowledge.
Yeah. So, if you want to learn more about Megan Elisa, the evidential medium, check out her episode. And then next we spoke to a returning guest and a very lovely person, Jenny Korotko. And she is the approachable healer, and she has a practice here in Chicago. She's a therapist, but she's also her expertise, at least we had her on for season 1 to talk about her spiritual journey. So you can catch her episode from season 1. And you can also catch her episode this season, where we really focus the conversation on toxic spiritual communities. And we talked about red flags. We talked about how to potentially recognize one, talk about how to get out of one, what help that you can seek if you feel like you might have either participated in one and are trying to recover from being in a toxic spiritual community, or even for people that are part of communities now that they're like, something may be a little off here, I don't know. So it's a really good episode. I am so grateful to Jenny for her vulnerability and coming on and talking about her personal experience with this and how she survived it, and lessons learned, and just the support that she has received after coming out of one particular spiritual community which was very damaging to her. So an important episode to listen to. Was there anything that you remember from that you like or stood out to you?
There's a few stuff. So one of them is she said that trauma makes you feel that is something wrong with you all of the time, like a bug that is like nagging you or going around your head. And which refers to like I think people can make mistakes, and when they find a community that they think is good, it's very easy to stick to it and stay in it. And also that her shaman, after she left the group and she went back to one of her shamans, um, and he said to her, if you're not in your joy the majority of your healing process, you're not in the right place. So yeah, I feel like she's such a strong woman, and the fact that she's putting herself out there right now with this episode and talking about it, but also had the courage to question the people that was the leader of this group was just like so much courage. And I don't know, I just admire her so much because I feel like she's so strong, she's very wise, and everybody can fall into something like this if the circumstances is in placement, if that makes sense. And also, if you have been through some of that, please reach out to somebody that can help you because it is. I haven't been there myself, but I imagine it will be very traumatic and probably a lot of trauma that comes up and you're sharing. But you, instead of maybe healing it, you will get re traumatized upon, like, on top of that again. So it's not a joke.
Right. Very serious
Like,
topic, and one that I think we're probably learning a little bit more about just in mainstream. There's been a couple of shows on Netflix which talk about, these toxic spiritual communities and very famous people, I think, that have been pulled into, like, we'll just say cults. But yeah, so thank you again, Jenny, for sharing your wisdom with us. And I hope that people get to listen to the episode and, learn something valuable and maybe something that can help them.
after Jenny, we had Almagrit. She is the founder of Responser, which is a Norwegian business, but she's going international now after this episode. She is a EFT therapist. So EFT is emotion freedom techniques. It's about tapping on different acupuncture points on your body while you're talking to yourself or acknowledging what is coming up. And she is so sweet, so patient, and so kind, and very like in tune to see where you should go and how far should you go if there is a trauma or an experience or whatever you want to work through. Um, she's very lovely to work with. And yeah, she talks a little bit about her story, how she found EFT, um, and how EFT can work for different people.
She's also a returning guest. So we did have her on for season 1, and you can listen to that episode in Norwegian, which is lovely.
Yes.
And we just had her come back so she could do an episode in English this season. And Estina is saying, very, very lovely person, very gentle, very kind, very intuitive. I would call her an intuitive healer just because I have personally had the experience of working with her. And, she's an certified and expert in EFT. But there's also this thing that you don't really learn. You just have it, and it's very natural to her, which is her intuition. And I think she really has a way of working with her guides, the divine source. She probably won't say it that way, but I kind of, in my opinion, in my experience, I feel like she does that, which is amazing. I do think that she gets a lot of intuitive hits when she's working with people, and I think that's what makes her very successful. So, so as Stina's saying, she is international and she will take clients from all over the world. She said as long as it works with her time zone, because she's not exactly going to get up at 3 in the morning, her time to work with anyone, but as long as you're within a reasonable time, reach out to her. She does have a Facebook page. And if you're interested, head on over to our website, visionofprofoundhealing.com. And we do have a free resource page, not just for her, but for every guest that we've had on our show, and all their contact info's there, book recommendations, podcast recommendations. So it's full of really awesome free resources. So thank you, Anne Magritte. And then next we had Yesenia Maldonado, who is a licensed clinical social worker here in Chicago. And she's also a yoga instructor, and she owns a very unique business here on the north side of the city, which is called Stay and Play Cafe, which she owns with her husband. And it's basically a board game cafe. So you can come in, have some really amazing Puerto Rican food, and you can choose any number of, like, she's got over 200 board games in the cafe that you can choose from to play. And it's a very family friendly, fun environment. And we just had the pleasure of just kind of talking to her and getting to know her story, how she came to be where she is now. And she talked about being a therapist for many years and also a director of an organization. And I think what I really appreciated was also her willingness to talk about a very vulnerable moment in her life when she struggled with burnout, basically, and not being able to really take care of herself the way that she knew she should have. But then that leading to her really walking away from everything. I think she went to Puerto Rico for some time and just kind of took a break and worked on volunteering to build homes for people that had lost their homes due to Hurricane Maria. And she planted trees and built homes. So I thought it was a very lovely story. Yeah, now also becoming certified as a yoga, I think trauma-informed yoga therapy. So it's a very specific kind of therapy that she does with yoga. And yeah, I really enjoyed our conversation. What did you like about that, Stina? What do you remember from that episode?
I think she was a delight to have on our podcast. She has, yeah, so many good stories, and just the way she talks about how important it is to take care of yourself and what the different types of, like, it's not just take care of yourself by running or like you're exercising. You also have to take care of your mental health, your physical health, the food that you're taking in your body, the spiritual, and also connecting to others. So it's not just one thing. And also, I really liked, she's also starting something new called Yes Real Connection.
Yeah. Yeah, she's also providing therapy through her company, Yes Real Connections, and consultation. So she's trying to give back what she feels like she was lacking in that support. She's supporting other organizational leaders and being able to take care of themselves, which I think is really neat, that she kind of turned this thing that she didn't have and that caused her so much grief into now what she wants to help others with. So it's very special. So check her out, yesrealconnections.com, and check out her episode.
Okay, next one out is Tatiana. So Tatiana, she is a somatic healer, but she's also a holistic coach and therapist. And in this episode, we are talking a lot about the nervous system and how it is when the nervous system is dysregulated, when you are in fight, flight, or freeze mode, and what this is doing to your body or everyday life. So when you're stuck in the fight, flight, or freeze response, it's not that uncommon to realize it yourself unless you're doing some digging, I guess.
Yeah.
She's also talking about her going from CPTSD, which is complex post traumatic stress disorder, and to thriving and working a lot, like over the normal hours. And now she's taking clients 3 days a week and she's just living her life in also a better state with herself. And in this episode, we also talk a little bit about meditation. What is meditation? The basic needs that you have as a human that we humans might forget, especially adults, I feel like. And she talks a little bit more about her podcast, which is She is Resilient. So, what do you feel like you took from this episode?
I just really like that Tatiana was so approachable, like in, how she practices. It really comes across. She's very warm, very kind, and very patient in explaining the whole concept of the nervous system and how it impacts pretty much everything: physical ailments, mental ailments, emotional ailments. I mean, she really tied it all together very well. So if you're curious about, somatic healing, what is it? Kind of the word gets thrown around a lot, and sometimes we don't really realize what it is. And the nervous system, for me, if I don't understand something, I start to tune out. But she really, really put it in terms where, it's very easy to understand. So I like that she was sharing just like her philosophy and like helping us understand what somatic therapies are, and the impact when you're not really paying attention to the nervous system. And I mean, we did have some laughs. So we talked about the VU, and I kind of regret not being able to practice VUing with her. So maybe we'll have her back so she can just do that for us. So if you want to check out more about Tatiana and the work that she does, check out that episode. And next we had Dakota Wint. I feel like this was a really interesting episode. So he is so many things: a YouTuber, blogger, plant medicine expert, traveler, world traveler, because he's gone to so many different parts of the world. Just a very interesting person to talk to. He was really more, I guess, someone who is exploring and kind of in touch with all of these very spiritual places and spiritual people. But I really was curious, not curious, I was really surprised at like the fact that he really wasn't into spirituality, or was kind of I don't know, maybe I don't want to say it that way, but that he kind of doubted the power of meditation and things like mediumship or being psychic. And yeah, so I thought that was fascinating. What did you think, Stina?
Well, when it comes to spirituality too, I think it's different like spots or different like but there's different types of spirituality for sure. If it's religion, if it's plant medicine, if it's the psychic abilities and so much more out there.
Yeah,
So I think he is investigating, but I don't think he's fully convinced yet.
that's a
But
great way to put it. Yes.
yeah, one day. Yeah, I just like his story about going from, I guess, when he was younger, talking about how that was, and not really having parents or like guardians that was keeping an eye on them. So he moved out very young with some friends and toured around at this festival selling stuff until he came across a monk. And then he started to get into plant medicine from his ex girlfriend. But after the breakup, that was kind of his awakening, if you can say that. And then he was starting to traveling, seeking different types of plant medicine, or yeah, like mushrooms, ayahuasca. He had tried frog poisoning, tobaccos, um, probably a lot more that I don't really remember. He talked a little bit about his relation to Ramdas, that he have tried to give yogis or shamans plant medicine to see what they say or like say about it. And they kind of like, oh, but I already been there through meditation. So it's not that big of a deal. Like I can reach it. I don't need to take this to get there.
And I thought
um
that was funny.
yeah.
But he did have a good laugh about it too, so he's a good sport.
Yeah. Yeah. He talks about his life, and he's a founder of a foundation too,
The community garden?
the community garden.
Mm.
So he is a founder of the community garden where they give their profits to children, I think, that needs medical care. And he's also traveling around having ceremonies with plant medicine with people that can sign up and travel with him. So if you want to do that, you can, yeah, contact him on his Instagram, or I think he has a website too that explains a little bit more about that. But yeah, it was nice of him to take time to be on our podcast. I don't think he really knew what he went into, or
He didn't know what he was
that
signing
we're,
up for, you know?
yeah,
It's okay.
two psychic girls that but it was fun. It is a good episode. So if you are interested in plant medicine, and check that out. And we are grateful that he took his time joining our podcast. So yeah. And our last guest is Barbara Witt. So Barbara, she called herself a channel, and she talks about her growing up doing music and stuff like that, and finding out she was a channel, and after a while finding out she was channeling Albert Einstein, and how that came through, and Albert Einstein's theory of world peace. And she is sharing her knowledge and wisdom from the channeling, and that she has gained through the time. She has been channeling for over 30 years. And I can imagine it's like 30 years ago, it must have been so different than what it is today. She's just this cute, amazing woman that is like, she's found her purpose. I feel like she knows what she wants in this lifetime. What do you think?
I love talking to Barbara. She was amazing. Very warm, very inviting, very open. I love her enthusiasm for wanting to talk about just this important message that, like you said, I think she has definitely found her purpose and has been living it for some time, and just wanting to spread knowledge and education and talk to as many people that as are willing to listen about what she called conflict revolution, and really the secret to world peace, which is incredible. And, I think what we were talking about is just, how she feels about channeling Albert Einstein, and, her journey, and, coming from the arts, like you were talking about, like music, and coming from that background. And actually talking, what surprised me was that, like you were saying, like 30 years ago, the spiritual stuff wasn't really all that accepted. But she said that she was fine because she was in these creative circles. And the thing where she potentially has come across some, maybe stigma or, pushback is recently. And she did share that she was on in another podcast that was more Christian based and had an unfortunate conversation there with just a difference maybe of opinion or views on, her ability to channel and what that means in terms of the religion. So, but I mean, very lovely. She spoke so intelligently about, how to bring about world peace and the part that we all play. And so I really appreciated her patience in explaining what, Einstein's message theory is about, how we as human beings in this lifetime what we can do to help bring about world peace. And that, maybe it may seem like a really, really big thing to undertake, but when you really break it down, if we all just do our part from whatever little corner of the world that we're in, that it can bring about real change. So I thought it was very hopeful. Her message is very hopeful. It's very inspiring. And I think very necessary, especially in these times when there's so much conflict and there's so much frustration and hurt and anger about just the things that are happening in the world. So a very timely message from a very lovely, knowledgeable woman. So if you're interested in learning more about channeling Albert Einstein, Secrets to World Peace, listen to Barbara With's episode. And we're very grateful to Barbara.
And we are also very grateful for everybody that has been listening to throughout this whole season and our first season too. So if you're one of our annual listener, we appreciate it. And please, please, please send us an email if there is something you want us to talk about. If you have any ideas who we can interview, or if you want to be on the podcast and feel like you can contribute with some knowledge and some spiritual juicy stuff, we are very open to that. And we are so grateful for all of our guests, all of the time that they have put down to be on this show. And I'm very grateful to you, Virginia, for doing this with me. Or we're doing this together, which is lovely. And yeah,
Well,
thanks again.
I'm grateful to you too, Stina. This wouldn't be happening without you. So I'm very grateful for our partnership and for your creativity and your very hard work, because you do a lot of the editing here and it's magnificent. And you're
Thank
very
you.
talented.
Thank
And
you.
also, like you said, thank you to all of our listeners and to everybody, internationally, because we know we do have a lot of international listeners, and to our US listeners, like our friends and people that support us. And in particular, thank you to one of our very enthusiastic supporter, Shar. Thank you so much. And also to another very enthusiastic supporter, Anna. Very grateful to you. And yeah, like Stina's saying, we invite everyone who's listening to get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you, any feedback you have. If you yourself want to be on the podcast, or you know somebody that would be a good fit for our podcast, don't be shy, reach out. You can send Stina an email at STINE, Stina at visionofprofoundhealing.com, or to myself, Virginia at visionofprofoundhealing.com. You can also just head on over to the website and kind of check out, all the free resources, like I mentioned before, and just there's also a way to contact us through the webpage. So thank you so much. We can't wait to see you in season 3. We're working hard on that.
And it's coming in September. So stay tuned. Thank you for listening to Vision Chat. You can find more about us at visionofprofoundhealing.com, where we offer readings, courses, and classes.